Last night was the final parents webinar for the Touch Typing and Technologies for Academic Success course for summer 21. It's a very important webinar as it ensures that the parents are informed of everything that was covered in the course and are in a position to take what was learnt into the academic year for the students to get the most out of the course. So this was the agenda for last night, and unfortunately the Zoom meeting didn't work at first, and so I was panicked trying to get it working, and therefore I forgot to press the record button. So I realised a few slides in, so now this is the next day and I'm recording what was missed last night. So I just started off by explaining what the objective of the meeting was, or the agenda of the meeting was, and it's to remind parents of what we covered on the course, then to let them know when the technology that the students learnt about should be used, and post-course dangers to be aware of. So these are problems that I've seen other parents have after the course, or things I've witnessed students doing wrong with the information or the skills that I've given them. So I want to make you aware of those. Then some people sent me questions beforehand, so I had a go at answering those. And then we talked about how to help going forward and how you can keep in touch with me and ask questions. And also I talked about the typing certificates. And one of the things I must say about the typing certificates is, I know I said, let me know what you want me to include for your child. This is very often because there's words per minute and there's accuracy, and I normally add the two together and say that is the best result, but most children want the highest speed rather than, they're not as worried about the accuracy. So because of that, I asked you to sort of direct me, because I wasn't well and I thought I could make a mistake. But I cannot create a certificate for something that child hasn't achieved. So I think one parent said, I think they'll probably get this. When they get that score, if you let me know and I can see it on typing.com, I'm quite happy to issue a new certificate. But if I issue a certificate for what the child is potentially capable of, they will have no motivation, they'll have no reason to get there themselves. So I definitely won't do that. So I always look at typing.com and give the best certificate I can, given what they've achieved on typing.com. And so right, that's what we did last night, and I'll take you through the slides that you will have missed. So I told the students the goal of the course many times. The goal of the course isn't that they become super fast and accurate at typing, but it's to enable them to type homework to get better grades. So that's what the course was all about. So that was the goal. And then I had these objectives that, yes, absolutely, I wanted to improve all the students' typing skills. I wanted to teach them about technology to improve grades, but I also really wanted to increase their self-esteem, to realise that they're bright, but they learn differently, and school isn't set up for them to be successful, and that this technology would enable them to overcome the problems that they experience, the very real problems they experience at school. And I really hope that that will have raised their aspiration levels. And because I think low aspirations is one of the biggest dangers a dyslexic student can have. And thanks to a lot of your feedback, the emails and the Google reviews, I can see that I have been successful with that. A lot of the children are a lot more confident, and they're far more aspirational for what they can achieve at school. So I hope that is the case for every student. So this is everything we're going to cover. So off I go just to talk about the course. And I'm doing this because I want to ensure that you all parents understand everything that was covered. And that way, if there's something that you missed, you can go back and find the videos for that week and go back and watch them again. So this line here is everything to the left is what we did in the supervised training, and everything in the right is what we did in the distance learning. So first of all, it was all about learning to touch type, getting the finger positioning correct and building up the muscle memory. And all of the students did really, really well with that. And then at a high level, I talked about how you can use technology to achieve higher grades. And in that, I introduced the prospect of text-to-speech, the fact that you can have your own work read aloud to you, then you can hear your mistakes, and if you hear your mistakes, you're able to correct them. And once you know about text-to-speech, you can use it instead of reading, not just with books for pleasure like audio books, but also with electronic textbooks or electronic notes from school. And so text-to-speech and typing together are the two technologies that really, really help dyslexics overcome difficulties with reading and difficulties with writing. So that was everything that we did on the supervised section. I didn't go into a lot of detail in the supervised section about how to actually use the technology. It was just more an overview that this is what you can do. And then these were what we looked at each week in the distance learning. And because we started off at the beginning of the summer holidays, I thought, well, we've learnt about text-to-speech, but now let's look at that from the point of view of reading for pleasure. Because studies have shown that reading for pleasure is one of the most useful things students can do. It really helps them in many different ways, and it does help them achieve more academically. So we looked then at immersive reading and text-to-speech and audiobooks. So that was the first week. And then the second week, which was more the crux of the course, because this is typing and technology. Typing is all about producing better quality written work, and so this is what the second week was all about. And we looked at the functionality within Microsoft 365, Office Online, Read and Write Chrome extension, and some fantastic functionality there, really, really brilliant functionality that enables students to produce better quality written work. And then we looked at creating notes in class, and one of the reasons why I look at this is people assume that once they've learnt to type, then absolutely they need to type their class notes. And that isn't necessarily the best thing to do. So in this week, we covered all the different ways you can help students get better quality class notes, because that's what they base their homework from and their revision from. So it's very, very important, but it isn't necessarily to type those notes. So we looked at getting electronic notes, RNIB Bookshare, which provides electronic textbooks, and Microsoft Lens, which enables students to take a photograph of a worksheet and not only to have that read aloud, but also to add their answers to the worksheet, be it typed or dictated. So that's and it's a free app, so that's really brilliant. And then finally, we looked at how to use text-to-speech, a computer reader, and our typing skills to be a laptop user in exams. So all of these things together work to enable students to achieve more academically. So that is the course in a nutshell. So when to use tech. I'm a great believer in the fact that the dyslexic students that I work with are bright, intelligent students. They just don't learn the way schools teach. But I've witnessed myself, in fact I've experienced myself personally, that dyslexics often go on and do really well at university and college and degrees and careers. So what our job as parents is to help them navigate through the school system such that they can go on and excel later on. And so a lot of that is just helping their self-esteem stay intact, even though they're in a school system that doesn't teach the way they learn. So in order to get in to do the college course that they can allow them to excel, I believe that dyslexic students need additional support. So they need technological support, which involves typing, but just parents learning how to support them at home, helping to let them to learn and to revise. And I believe they need extra teaching support. And the teaching support is beyond the remit of this course, but the course was trying to help with the technology, the typing, and the parental support. And so we are starting with the end in mind. We're wanting our students to be able to go on and have careers that use their natural skills and talents. Very often their dyslexic skills have been innovative and creative and problem solving, but in order to do that they've got to make these minimum entry requirements for whatever course. So we are talking about the additional support that allows our students to do that. And so what I'm looking at now is the whole idea of what do they need when they come to take formal exams. And a lot of the students on the course are a lot younger. A lot of the students are sort of 10 or 11. And so that's a long way off. But students don't just go abracadabra ready at 16 to use all the technology to help them and the techniques to help them at this stage. So we need to set them up for success right from primary school. If we start with the end in mind, my goal would be for when dyslexic students take formal exams, they are laptop users, which means they can use their fast typing skills to type, and they use a computer reader which reads the questions and the supplementary papers out loud to them to ensure that they don't go off on a tangent and answer the question incorrectly because they haven't read the question correctly. So that's what I think is setting our children or our students up for success. And in order to do that, well, they can't be a laptop user unless they've learnt to type and they've used this technology to get better grades. And you can't just start using a computer reader. You've got to be used to using it. You can't just use it in exams. You've got to be used to using it on your electronic notes, electronic textbooks, and just being familiar with using text-to-speech in general. And before that, then students might want to use dictation when they're too young to learn to type, and to get used to using text-to-speech, then starting to be able to listen to books and not just read them is really, really helpful. And even having intervention solutions online that enable them to learn phonics and spelling rules that makes the repetition fun, that gamifies. But all of that requires self-esteem, because students, if they've given up, then they're far more likely to put the time in to learn all these different skills if they feel like, well, I'm rubbish, I'm not capable. And on top of all these technological skills, I really do believe that our students need to learn how to learn and learn how to revise. And I don't cover this. These dark orange boxes and the bright orange boxes aren't covered in my touch typing and technologies for academic success course, but they are things that I'm very concerned about and do a lot of work with. But this up until now is very much on my one-to-ones, individual consultancy, because these are areas where students differ, although there is some commonality. So that's how we start with the end in mind. We, at the primary age, start using this functionality, which then leads on to the functionality that we want students to use in formal exams. So I think you'll all be familiar with this. This is an example that I give students, and it shows that if you were to write for a full 2.5 hours when you're doing an essay-based exam, and in all honesty it would probably be more like 3 hours, because the students that I work with tend to get 25% extra time, which is an extra 40 minutes, and 19 is a very acceptable, good handwriting speed. It's a very average handwriting speed for a 16-year-old. So in 2.5 hours, If you're handwriting, then you can write about 190 sentences. And just an okay typist, 29 words per minute, could write an extra 100 sentences. So an extra 100 sentences gives you the opportunity to earn a lot more marks. But I would hope most of my 16-year-olds would be able to type about 50 words a minute, which is an extra 310 sentences. Now, I'm not going to go into all the assumptions I made, but they are explained in this video. So you can look on my YouTube channel and have a look at those. But the speed that our students can type at really, really is significant. And here is where I did start recording, so I will finish this recording now and merge this together with last night's recording and record the rest later. So this is, I've explained why it's good to start early, and you guys have done that, which is great, and it really is worthwhile. So the children at these ages, they don't tend to get really fast speeds, although I always have some students that do, but we want to keep them typing so that they are getting fast speeds, and it is their normal way of working when they are 16. Do shout up if anything is not obvious, by the way. So just because self-esteem is so important, on my website, I do have some pages that just talk about how to help build confidence. And I have a video as well on the YouTube channel. So if you are wondering about that, then they could be helpful resources. I watched this video and the dubbing is bad. I don't know how it's happened, but my lips and the speech don't work together. So I need to recreate it. But all these different videos are videos you can watch with your children. And these are more for older children. But some of these are really great, and I've found that they've really helped my students with their self-esteem. So how can technology help dyslexics get better grades? Well, these are just, I've cherry-picked some of the PowerPoints that were in the videos that you've watched. So when it comes to reading to learn, text-to-speech, electronic textbooks, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and immersive reader are all things that will help children read to learn. When it comes to learning in the classroom, there are lots and lots of online resources, be they videos, podcasts, or apps. So if your child is finding that they're not getting what a teacher is teaching them, then I always look for alternative resources online. And there are just some fabulous videos, podcasts, and apps out there. And I have actually created an ebook that you can get from my website that just explores some of the best online resources I've found. But obviously there are a lot more online resources and they're increasing all the time. So if your child has a particular subject that they're finding hard, just have a look for them. I've said in one of the videos, I think it was a note-taking video, that I think parents should ask schools to provide electronic notes so children aren't having the pressure of taking notes while they're listening and learning new information. I would send an email to each teacher at the beginning of every academic year. I would explain that my child was dyslexic. I would explain that they're not very good at taking notes. The quality of their notes is really poor. If they only have that to do their homework, it's not good enough. Could you possibly supply electronic notes? And I would say about 40 to 50% of the teachers said, oh yeah, no problem, here goes. These are copies of my PowerPoint slides, or I have these, and probably 60% of the teachers were like, I don't know what you're talking about, can't do that. And if they couldn't do it because all their notes were handwritten and they didn't have anything they could share, then I would say, okay, well, tell me the textbook that follows your course, because I think it's just too much to expect dyslexic children to be able to write really good notes while learning new information. Teachers, I would say, if they couldn't give me electronic notes, always gave me a textbook that I could use, and that was really helpful. And then on top of that, if you ask the school to get RNIB Bookshare, then you get the electronic copy of the textbook that enables you to listen to it and change the fonts. If you just buy the electronic book yourself, sometimes the publishers have created it in such a way that you can't listen to it. So it's really frustrating. You think, well, I won't go for the charity route. I'll just buy it. So you spend the £8 or the £10, and then they've created it in such a way that you can't listen to it. And that is really frustrating. It doesn't always happen, but it has happened in the past. So I would always start with getting the school to get RNIB Bookshare, because it is completely free. So that's all I was going to say there. And yeah, when it comes to writing, you've also got dictation. And now that your children can type, I think it's fine to use dictation. It's much quicker. Some children prefer it, but not to the detriment of their typing. And they're complementary skills, typing and dictation, because dictation is never 100% correct. So you have to correct it with typing. So they're the different things, and they're the two videos that explain all of that in more detail. So I just wanted to, because they're all pretty key things that I hope all your children will use. So I've covered the first two topics. So now I'm going to talk about post-course dangers to be aware of. Have you managed to watch the video on the dangers?
Not yet.
Okay, so I will talk through them quickly, but it is definitely worth watching, because my kids did sort of fall into some of these traps, but I noticed that the students that I teach, kids, fall into these traps a lot more than my children did. And I think that's because I didn't let them get away with it, because I really understood what they should be doing, which is the reason why I think it's really important that I teach parents, because kids, they're exhausted by school. They just want to hand something in and get away without doing any more homework. And so I think the more parents understand what they can use, the better for them. So let's go and have a look. Right, these are the biggest dangers. I've put them in 4 different categories. You've got dangers to do with typing, technology, the school being unsupportive, and parents being unaware. And basically, if parents are unaware, you cannot direct, you cannot prompt, and you cannot push the school, because you don't know what you should be pushing for. So that's why I'm doing this. So that deals with the parents unaware. When it comes to unsupportive schools, I do find there are shockingly unsupportive schools, and it's really hard to predict whether a school's going to be supportive or not. I hope all your schools are supportive, but if they're not, you're not on your own. A lot of this is because they simply don't have enough laptops, but I would hope after the pandemic, more schools have enough laptops, because to have children being laptop users in exams, which is what we want, the schools have to provide the laptops. You as parents cannot provide the laptops, because the schools have to check that there's nothing on there that can help them, that will put them at an advantage over other children. So finances is a big reason why schools don't do this. And so if I was in a school where that was the case, I would think, right, let us do some fundraising to make sure the school has enough laptops. And parents are really good at doing this, and parents are really receptive and will do it. So the school has the money, so they have the devices, and they don't have to be expensive devices. They can be very, very cheap devices, but they have to belong to the school. You can't just say, well, my child's got a MacBook, so he can take it in, or it doesn't work like that. It has to belong to the school. Something that's happened on the last course I taught, which I thought's worth mentioning, is one girl who thankfully had really understood what I taught and was able to forcefully say to the teacher, what you're saying is not right, but she still had to get her mum involved. They said to her, oh, you're not typing notes in class. And she said, no, I find it easier to write notes in class. And they said, if you don't type notes in class, it isn't your preferred normal way of working, so you cannot type in exams. And this is a learning support department, and they were saying that to the mum and the daughter, and And that's ridiculous. And I'll explain to you why that's ridiculous. When a child is taking exams and they're typing because they're writing essays. So they're being posed a question and they're needing to answer this question by typing the answer, which equates to how a child does their homework. Because in homework, they're given a question and then they can do their research in order to answer it. Taking notes in class is an incredibly different task. It's about learning new information and summarizing and capturing that. It's not the same. So if a school says, oh, if they don't take notes in class, they cannot, it's not their normal way of working. Well, it's not their normal way of taking notes in class, but their normal way of working is how they do their homework. And your children will all be, hopefully, typing their homework. So I wanted to mention that because I was actually quite shocked by that one. The other thing to mention is I'm doing these certificates now, and I'm very, very happy to do them. I do D of E things at Duke of Edinburgh. All your children can have when they come to do the D of E award, they can have typing as their skill, and I'm happy to sign stuff to verify that they've done it. But I do have to go and check that they have done it, and I am giving them a certificate that is a speed that they've achieved. So I'll give you that, and it's a nice thing. It's a nice conversation starter. It's a bit of proof to give learning support departments. But for some schools, it's not enough. Some schools have these really fixed rules that say, until you can type 40 words a minute, it cannot be your normal way of working. Now, I hope this is none of your schools, and it might not be, but I just want you to be forewarned. I understand why learning support departments or schools put these in, because it's good to have something to aim at. So if students come to me and they say, oh, miss, I've got to learn to do something at 40 words a minute, I say, great, well, we'll work towards that. But as long as the child can type as fast as they can write, there are benefits to typing. And so that's why on the certificate, I put the handwriting speed in. So if the handwriting speed is 9, 10, or 11, and they can type at 25 words a minute, even though it doesn't hit the school's minimum, what is the motivation in the school not allowing them to type if it's faster than their handwriting speed? So that is what I would always go back and say to the school. And it's a bit like, it's all very well having these hard and fast rules, but are you doing what's best for my child? And what's best for my child is probably, as long as they can type faster than they can write, then they type. If it hurts their hand, if they have a poor pencil grip, if their writing is poor, is illegible. So then the final thing, which is really, really new, I think this month, the JCQ, the Joint Qualification Council, JCQ, I don't know, but they've come out with their latest guidance. And what they're saying now is, if a child can only type in exams because they have slow handwriting speed, then they could lose their extra time for being able to type. Now, this is really new, so it might happen, but if that does happen, I would make sure that your child got 25% extra time. You've got to make sure that their typing speed is way over 25% faster than their writing speed. So if it is 2, 3, or 4 times faster, the fact that you lose 25% isn't as bad. But I would suggest that most children do not get 25% extra time just because of their handwriting speed. There's normally an element of processing speed and reading speed in there. So I think you've got an argument to say, no, you can't take 25% extra time off. And why a school would want to do that, I don't know. But just so you know, there is some new information in the guidelines that is talking about that. So I don't want you to be blindsided. Okay. And then the rest I have more slides for. Oh, just so if you do have an unsupported school, anything you can do that's positive rather than complaining is much better. A school will always, I tend to be, or I used to be with my kids, the most positive, encouraging, grateful parent. You know, if they did anything that helped my child, I would send them an email. I would copy in their boss. I was known for being super grateful, super supportive. So when I ever did bring something up, they didn't think, oh, it's Mrs. Bateman. She's always, she's always got something negative to say. I think if you're normally super positive and then you bring up something negative, then you get taken more seriously. But I would not even bring up something negative. The sort of thing I would do would be, oh, I watched this incredible video and I found it really helpful. You might like it. Or I've read this great article. I tried to come at things like we were both trying to figure out the best way to help my children. And if I found something, I would give it to them. And if they found something about how I should be doing at homework, they would give it to me. And I just tried to really have this, we're in this together, and I'm really grateful that you're partnering with me. And that really helped. And then I saw other parents who were fighting and arguing, and I don't think it was good for their children. I think their children would feel like, oh, my teacher's not very good, or, and if you're already feeling insecure and my teacher's not very good, I don't think that helps. But if you think, well, my teacher's great and my teacher understands where I'm coming from, is a lot better. Now, I know that's beyond your control, but even if you were just to go into school and say, look, I've met this, my kids went on this course and really helpful and lots of stuff, just asking them to contact me or look at my resources, it's a really positive way of doing it rather than you guys aren't doing any of this, you've got a lot to learn. Now, truthfully, I think a lot of parents do tell schools about me and they still don't get in touch, but at least you can try. But that is a more positive way of getting schools so they are receptive to your requests. So the biggest danger really is,
what's so funny?
Children stop typing or they plateau. And with my children, this didn't happen because my kids learned to type and my kids were all in schools that gave them lots of homework. And I was really shocked when I started teaching other students how many schools just don't give homework. So if they don't give them homework, these children are not practicing their typing skills and they're losing the muscle memory. If that's the case, I would really suggest that your children get in the habit of typing up class notes. And they're not going to like that and they're not going to want to do that because they're going to see that that's an extra thing that at the moment they're just writing the class notes and now you're actually going to do something else. But when I get one-to-ones with children and I'm teaching them how to learn, one of the most important things they can do is to read over their class notes, articulate their class notes to someone. So when mum says, what did you learn today? And they say nothing. Yeah, that it's one of the most helpful things they can do is just say, this is what I learned today. Because the fact that they've done that means it lodges the information in their brain. And if they then type it up quickly, it's really going in their brain. And when they come to revise at the end of the term for the exam, they will be in a much better situation. And the other thing that I teach children when we have one-to-ones is how to turn those revision notes into revision apps that, ask them questions and mark them. So then it makes it worthwhile doing it. So that's what I would do, but I know that it's not an easy sell. But if you don't have homework, then you do have to think, how am I going to keep these kids typing? When it comes to continuing with lessons and games, all the accounts, the Typing Club, typing.com, those accounts are there forever. So I often see students that have been on courses a long time ago, still doing lessons, still doing time tests. So they can always go on and do it. But obviously there's a there's a big degree of self-motivation there. So they've got to have that. And for very young children, I don't know if Lucia's mum is here, but Lucia's mum, no, she's not, I don't. She bought English type, which cost about £30. And I'd only say this for very young children. If they are not, because you don't tend to get essay homework when you're young, but Lucia was really motivated by the games in English type, and it's doing something well. And it's something that I don't use on my course because as a teacher, it doesn't let me see what they're doing. And me having visibility of how a child is doing is how I run the courses, because then I can give them advice, I can give you advice. Whereas English type, the architecture is such as it's just on your machine, but it's lovely, lovely typing program. Now, something else that I do is your children can come back every summer and just do the distance learning part of my course. So that's not the 4 days, but the 5 weeks after. So they'll be in a WhatsApp group, they can come to the webinars, they can win prizes. And that is considerably less than going on the course. So it's majorly discounted. And I could see that being something that, you know, they would just get better and better every year. And when they come back, they'll be like the big kids that know what's going on. So that's an option for you. Now, the best option is they just start doing homework and they get better and better. But if they don't, then you always have this option, particularly for younger students. And I have had students attend the whole thing again because they just didn't practice. And when they come in, they're better than like a non-typist, and they make significant improvements. But there was one child on this course who had done the whole thing again. And again, I give a significant discount. You don't have to buy the webcam again. You don't have to get the keyboard again. And I do give a significant discount if you need to do the whole course again. So do bear that in mind. This isn't just a one-off thing. You can always come back. So now I've taken this video out of the how technology can help and hinder, and I do recommend watching that video. So if I was to say these are the 5 steps that students need to go through in order to do their homework. First of all, they need to understand the question, not go off on a tangent. So using text to speech to listen to it is a good idea. They then need to do research to find the correct information to answer the question, and they'll look through class notes, textbooks, and the internet to do that. And that's where I would have all of this in electronic format. I would use dyslexia-friendly fonts. I would use read aloud if it helps. I would use dyslexia-friendly fonts. If it doesn't help, I wouldn't bother. I would use the background color, the reading ruler. You know, there's lots of different things that you can do. So you're making this research better. Because what I found with my students was when they were reading books for pleasure on Kindle, they always changed the font on the Kindle. They always changed the background color. But when they were reading physics or history or RS, stuff they didn't really enjoy, they weren't doing it. So if they do it when they read for pleasure, then absolutely they should do it when they're doing research, which, you know, lots and lots of reading required for GCSEs and A levels. So having it read aloud will help. And then plan what to include. Just dictate, type, and then cut and paste. Cut and paste is a gift. Dyslexics and people with different learning difficulties, I have ADHD as well, I think, we do not think in a linear fashion. So when we read a question, we don't think, oh, I know, this is the right conclusion. This is the right introduction. And I should include this in my first paragraph, and this in my second, and this is my conclusion. We don't think in a linear way. And so cut and paste enables us to brainstorm all our ideas down and then organize them, and then listen to them back as we organize and think, well, does that make sense? Does it flow? Is it logical? And then finally, we refine and finesse. And this is when we do the spell check, the grammar check, we check the vocabulary, we use synonyms and thesaurus and parts of speech. So how can technology hinder? Well, I have said before that typing notes in class isn't always the best thing to do. I think you're better off having teachers give you electronic notes or hard copy notes that the children can annotate. I think children should be concentrating on learning the new information, understanding it, asking questions, answering questions, being engaged in the class, rather than trying to type what's been said. And research does back up that that is the best thing to do. Now, I have definitely come across students who say, no, it really helps me to type. And fair dues, if it really helps you, I think, great, go for it. But I don't want students to think, well, I've learned to type, therefore now I have to type my notes. I don't think that's the case at all. So that's the first one. A spell check. When you're doing that brain dump of ideas to answer the question, switch spell check off. It can be done very easily. You don't hand in work without a spell check, but you don't have it when you're doing that brain dump. Because what I see children doing is that they're excited about answering the question. They're excited that they know this will answer it, and this will answer it, and this answer it, and they give you all this different information. And then once they see that squiggle, they just stop. And they never seem to get the same momentum back again. So you're far better off switching that off. And the other thing that I warn students about a lot is do not plagiarize. And my son was terrible for this. He hated homework so much. He hated writing essays. He felt like, I've done this all day at school and I hated every minute of it. And now you're making me do it again. So once he started typing, he would listen to a web page and he'd think, oh, that kind of answers the question. And he would cut and paste the contents of that web page into a Word document, put the question on the top, date it, put his name on, print it off and hand it in. And it wasn't his work. He didn't really understood what he's done, but it was easy. And I think that is, I've given children this toolbox that if they want to plagiarize, they can. And I also know that that teachers have said, you're not typing your homework anymore because you just plagiarize. All you do is you cut and paste and hand it in. So you've got to make sure the children do not do that, because we want them to have all these benefits and we don't want them taken off because they're plagiarizing. So that requires a bit of supervision. And the other thing, and that's one of the main reasons why I keep saying parents watch the videos, is even though children know how to use it and they know that all these lovely things exist, they often just don't bother. They just want an easy life. They just want to hand something in. They're tired. So it needs a parent to say, well, have you listened to that? I don't think you've listened to that, because there's certain things, that sentences that don't make sense. And, oh, have you gone through and checked for some synonyms? Because you've used that word a lot. And that's where I was on my kids' back, and it made them get used to using all this functionality that if parents don't know about it, they can't do. And then the dangers that I've come across is if you don't introduce text to speech early, teenagers tend to hate it and they don't tend to use it. You've already had your kids learn to type, so that's fine. We won't do that. And as I've already said, using all these things just because they can get higher grades and they know how to use it, doesn't mean they necessarily will. And that might just be a boy thing, because my 2 girls did and my 1 boy didn't, but it could also be a severity of dyslexia thing. His dyslexia was a lot more severe and he hated writing essays a lot more than they did. They actually got to quite enjoy it and get good at it. So when it comes to exams, it's about getting access arrangements in place, as in having the school recognize that your child should be able to be a laptop user in exams. And you can't start those conversations early enough. And I do want to warn you that my children went to private schools, and the private schools they went to were really into them having the right access arrangements. I taught at a state school, and I would be teaching children who were just as just as dyslexic as my children, and they weren't getting the same access arrangements because the school just didn't have the time, the inclination, the staff, the experience. And so
it does differ an awful lot by school. And there are state schools that are very, very good at this. And there are private schools that are not so good. But on the whole, I would say that private schools have kind of bought into this a lot more because they have the resources. So I apologize if that's bad news, but better that you know. And with all of this, it really does need to be a child's normal way of working. You don't just say it's their normal way of working, so you get permission to do it. It needs to be their normal way of working. Otherwise, it will be more of a hindrance than a help. Also, you can't use all these refined finesse things in the exams. So there are some instances where you can, but they're very, very unusual. And so in the run up to exams, when children are answering past papers, then they've got to get used to not working with these. So for doing homework, yes, great. But when we're getting used to exam technique, then don't use stuff that you won't be able to use in the exam. So now I'm going to get your questions answered, and I hope I've answered that use of spell check. It's actually really easy to switch it off, and it differs on what you're using. But if you just go into help and search switch off spell check as you type, it will tell you how to do it. And I'll probably create a video and show you how to do it in Office 365, but I don't have older versions, so I can't do that for you. How much to persevere with reading? Our children need to be able to read, but I think when it comes to academic reading, we are putting obstacles in their way if we force them to read it when text-to-speech is available. You know, yes, it's great to read for pleasure. I think once my children got to secondary school, I let them use text-to-speech for absolutely everything. And they all managed to learn to read relatively well. Even my boy, he's not a great reader, he never will be, but he knows how to use technology. So that's my opinion. I would, when it comes to chemistry, physics, history, RS, I would just use text to speech every time. Otherwise, you're just making everything more difficult. Getting access arrangements to type in exams, I think I've talked about that. That needs to be a conversation that you're starting to have with school as soon as possible. And when not to use the functionality to help with written work, that's, I think, in the run up to exams when we're learning exam technique, then don't use stuff when you're doing mock papers that you won't be able to use in the real paper, in the real exam. So they were the questions that were submitted to me beforehand. I'm going to go on, but if you want at the end to ask any other questions, that's fine. How can I help going forward? My YouTube channel, oh no, this is my Facebook group. If you are on Facebook, I would always prefer to answer a question in a public forum, because then other people get the benefit of the answer. And I don't have that much activity on my Facebook group. This is basically, it's called Empowering Dyslexics Achieve Now. If you are on Facebook, I would become a member of the group. And then if anything happens in your school and you want to say, in my school, they're not letting me do it for this reason, then if you put it on there, when I answer you, other people can see, and then it saves me giving the same answer to lots and lots of people. But I'm always very happy to answer questions there. The YouTube channel is continually updated. I have lots of videos that I've the editing just takes so long. So I've created the videos, but I need to edit them and put them on. So I've got a whole thing on free dictation solutions, and I do a comparison to help you know which is the best one to use. So that's coming. I've got quite a few different things in production at the moment. So I would, if you have a question with regard to a particular video, then rather than use Facebook, I would go in and ask the question in the comment for that particular video. But I would, if I were you, I would subscribe and hit the bell button so you're informed when I create new things, because if anything useful comes out, I try to create a video and you just will be informed when it happens. Otherwise, you could miss out. This is I will send you these slides, but this is how I would go about using the web page in the YouTube channel in the first instance. You see how it's organized, you work out what's the best. To be honest, you don't need this because we've done this in the course. So really, you're fine, you don't need that. I do consultancy. I often do consultancy with children that have been on my courses. I can either be in your home or remotely, and it's not an ongoing expense. It's just like a one-off, setting them up, working out what you have at home that you've already paid for, what devices, what software, so what they should be using, maybe creating users, showing them how to use what you've got. But other than technology, I do teach children how to learn, how to prepare to take exams. I help parents with navigating access arrangements, and how to make the most of what you've got. So what tends to happen is, whereas a dyslexia tutor is every week for an academic year or a few academic years, what I tend to do is when a kid starts secondary school, I might have a 2-hour session, get the parent and the child set up to work together, and then maybe at year 9, at the end of year 9, when they're about to start secondary school, the GCSEs, then they might get me involved again. When the work level increases, then I might be asked, well, what can we do differently now? But I'm really, really happy to help with that. I'm very invested in children that have been on my course. I really kind of want them to do the best they can. So I love being able to help. I've already talked about what I do with schools. I think for a child to do really well, the best thing that can happen is I teach the child, I teach the parents, I teach the teachers, the classroom teachers, and I help the learning support department to really know their stuff. And then they can help lots and lots of students. So I love teaching teachers and learning support departments because they go on and spread the word to lots and lots of other students. So I will do your certificates. I'm very happy to do them tonight or tomorrow morning. And that is everything. I would love to know from you, and I don't mean now, it's late, but if you could call me or text me, WhatsApp me, or stay on the call now and tell me how I could improve the course, how you think I could get into schools, because I just feel like so many children would benefit from learning what your children have learned. And yet so few schools know about this. It's untrue. I've had an 11-year-old in primary school go in and teach the primary school teachers how to use technology that the school had invested in, but they didn't know how to use it, and how I can attract more families to be on this course. So that is everything I was going to do. And so I just want to open this up now to you to answer any questions you might have. Guys, have I not been sharing my slides all this time?
Yeah,
You have.
Oh, good, because I can't see the share and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. Okay, stop share. it had gone behind something. Okay, so that's everything I was going to show, but I'm very happy to answer any questions that have not been answered.
I think we've all got kids at different stages, haven't they? And I think it would be lovely for you to do a one-to-one with my son. Definitely, I'll get in touch with you about that. But just a brainstorming to see. I think that learning how to learn is critical, really. And he's at the older end, but he really doesn't know that well enough at all.
Yeah, that's very true. And one of the ways I like to do that, which I think is the most effective, is when they have something they have to learn, and then I help them learn it. Because if I have lots and lots of examples from when my own children were at school. So I've got how I taught them different things. And it's great if they're doing the same exams. But if they're not, then it's a lot of effort to learn something that they don't need. But when they have something that they need to revise, I can sit down with both the student or the student and the parent and say, okay, how does this work for you? Well, this is how I would do it. And the idea isn't that, and then every time they need to revise something, I get involved. No, I'm trying to set the student and also the student and the parent up, because I help my kids all the way through to A level. Well, not when they were doing maths, but with essay subjects. I help my kids all the way through. And I think parents can really support learning. Now, if you haven't got time, you can't. But there's little things that parents can do. Like, I'll give you an example. If one of my children said, like I know nothing about A-level philosophy, I hate the stupid thing, but my daughter would say to me, Mum, I just don't understand this one particular topic. And I'd say, okay, leave it with me. And I would go on YouTube or the internet generally, and I would look for people teaching that topic. And I'd watch the videos and I'd think, well, that looks a bit too simplistic, or that looks a bit too advanced. And I might just come up with 2 or 3 that I think, I think that's really useful. And I would send them to her and say, take a look at those. And that actually saved her going onto YouTube and then getting distracted by all the stuff that's on YouTube. And I was able to give that to her. And I found that a really helpful thing that I did for all my kids, because I didn't want them getting distracted. So it's
Good idea.
There's just little things like that that you can do to help them. And so I would just do some of the oink work. Like, there's something called Quizlet, which is how I take typed revision notes and turn them into revision aids. And I do that for my children, because I just think, well, while you're revising, I know how to bing bang bosh this. And then they had that, and it just saved them time, and they could concentrate on learning. And I did I was like their PA. It would make their life a bit easier. And they got good grades.
Yeah.
And we have a really nice relationship. I think at first they'd be thinking, oh, I don't want your help, I'm not a child. And then they realize, oh, actually, this really saves me time. Thank you, Mum. Could you do it for me in this subject as well? Sorry, so that was the long answer to a short question.
Good, thank you.
I was wondering, Caroline, sorry, my video is not working. This is Alice. Just when you talk about, talking to the school about access arrangements and that kind of thing as early as possible. I mean, my son's now just gone into year 7, and we're going to sort of getting the laptop set up for him to use, in as many lessons as possible. But in terms of then talking about like exams, when do you start to do you start to even sort of say that now that, we're getting the laptop in the hope to use it for exams? I don't know. So when you have to sort of,
because he'll have end of year exams in end of year 7, and so it's sort of if he's typing all his homework,
yeah,
then I would suggest he should be able to type in the exam.
Okay.
Your school might just be like, oh yeah, that's no problem. But if there is a problem, I'd rather find out about it in year 7.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And then you start working towards it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you were at the beginning, but I've advised parents to start fundraising so the school has more devices, because that's very often what stops schools giving them the access arrangement. It's not that the child doesn't need it, it's just they just don't have enough devices.
Yeah. So the way to demonstrate is the usual way of working will be mainly through how they do their homework and how they're doing exams at school through their school career.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if the school gives you a hard time, then a lot of the reason why schools give a hard time is because they don't have the resources to provide all the evidence. So you can start providing evidence. You can say, well, my son did this homework and it took him this long, and you write on it, took 3 hours and 2 minutes. And then you can say, oh, my son typed this homework, an equivalent homework, and it took him this long. And then they see the difference in the grades that they got.
Okay.
So we as parents can start getting the evidence and making the school's life easier.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else?
I did have one more. And it was just to do with, you showed them on the course all this great functionality, like you added, I think at the end, the last step of doing your homework, like the, checking your spellings, doing using different synonyms, that's how you say it. And, can you improve the readability, those kind of things. And I'm just wondering if they get used to using that, and then when it comes to the actual, GCSEs, they can't have those functionalities switched on. Through using it, are they kind of learning? I kind of feel, oh gosh, if they start to get dependent on this when they come to actually do an exam, they shot themselves in the foot a bit. Or
the only one I think is dangerous is dictation.
Okay. Yeah.
I think that really is dangerous because you can't do that in exams. I think while you are doing your homework, if you're looking at synonyms, thesaurus, parts of speech, you are just improving the quality of your work. So when you come to revise, you're revising from a better quality piece of work.
Yeah.
I would say, and this isn't for year 7 exams, I would say for GCSEs, the last month of revision is just past paper, past paper, past paper. And then you don't use it because you are trying to replicate exam conditions. Now, you might not start off exactly with exam conditions, but your goal is by the end of the month, you're doing past papers in exam conditions. And then you don't start using them. So at the end, they need to get used to not using them, because otherwise they will be thrown if the first time they've not had all this functionality is when they're actually doing the GCSEs. But I'd say that's the month before the exam, maybe before the exam.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Can I ask a question, please?
Go for it.
Yeah. Is there anything about naming conventions, as in file naming conventions, that you've done that I've missed? Because I think that's a little piece of the jigsaw puzzle that's missing for my kids, is that we're typing up notes and we're writing essays, but they can't find them again because they haven't been taught naming convention. And I can't teach my kids anything because anything I say is utterly ridiculous.
You know what? That is a really good thing to include on the course. When I do one-to-ones, that is something I talk about a lot, being able to find and using search functionality. So you have to think, well, if you can't remember what you called it, can you remember what you said? And then you go and search for them. But I haven't taught the children it, and I think you're really right. It would have been a useful thing to do. I'm trying to think of tasks that will help me do it. It is hard when you're not physically creating anything to teach them naming conventions. But what I teach children when I do one-to-ones is I have a folder for every subject. And then I might have within a subject each topic. And it's basically having autosave switched on. So it is auto-saving. And if you use the first line that you write is a meaningful heading, then if it auto-saves, it normally auto-saves, well, it doesn't always, but sometimes it auto-saves with that first heading as the name. Other times it does it as document 11. But no, that's all I do on the naming conventions. But a lot of it is I teach them how to find work, because they go, Miss, I can't find it. And they go, okay, what was it about? So this is how you use the search functionality. And when did you create it? So this is where you say, well, it was sometime between Monday and Friday. So I kind of teach them how advanced search techniques a lot of the time. But I think that is I don't know how I'll include it. It's much easier on a one-to-one because I can see, well, what have you written in geography? And well, what should you have named that would have made it easier to find, and get them to think about it a bit more.
You could probably use them to write notes after each of your sessions. So if you've done a YouTube video for either the child or the parent, you could say, right, your homework is to go and type up the notes and save it.
I like that idea. Thank you. Yeah.
That is a really good idea. Thank you, Lindsay. Anybody else? Well, all of your children did very well. I'm going to go and look at the chat. I just see that there's 5 chats. Okay. I don't think there's any more questions, but if you have, just shout out. But as I say, the Facebook group is really good for asking questions, and everyone gets to see the answer, and then people benefit, and then other people can chip in because other people have really good ideas, and they've had different experiences. So thanks very much, all of you. If you do let me know what you want, I will go and check that it is actually a score that they had, but I can put the typing certificates out pretty quickly now. Okay, they're quite big documents if I do them as PDF format, because I sent Lindsay's earlier and it was 6 megabytes, which is huge, but it's sent no problem. I think most email systems are used to handling big files now. Okay, any other questions before we say goodnight?
No.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Good
Thank
luck,
you.
Caroline, thanks.
I wish them every luck, and I hope they carry on typing and doing really well. See you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.